All right, and here we are back after the film screening. Thanks so much for that, Kim. Joining us, we have Kim Johnston from his home just outside of Winnipeg. Kim,
Hello.
hi. We can hear
I
you.
I can't hear the question.
Oh, you
Hi,
can't?
Aaron.
Can you hear me?
I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
getting.
Sorry, everyone. Yeah, we're here. We are back alive again. You get to experience all of the fabulous technical difficulties of doing this for the first time. So, a big round of applause for Kim Johnston's film, the Last Winter, seminal Manitoba production. Really, one of the first. Really serious feature films to be shot here in Manitoba. So, I mean, first of all, Kim, is there anything you'd like to kind of say to kind of preface or lead out of that screening?
Well, I'm just thrilled that the Gimli Film Festival is putting on this program, and that you saw fit to uh, uh, make the last winter part of your programming. I think that's great. It's nice to resurrect the movie. It's been a while,
Yeah.
um, and hopefully it sustains for an audience today. That's up for others to say, I suppose.
For
But I saw lots of great performances in there, and all the technical people, all the filmmakers that were involved in making this. I think it's safe to say that it was a memorable experience for all of us, and we had a good time out in Western Manitoba back then. Yeah,
I believe it. Yeah.
it was hard to live.
I have to say, as a filmmaker myself, and I never went to film school, but definitely one of the pieces of advice that I always received from folks was twofold: don't work with kids and don't work with animals.
And they're
So
right.
you're
Good
basically
advice. Well, we had a good bunch of kids and a good bunch of animals and a good wrangler, and we had our moments. But I have to say that it was a very, very positive experience. I think pervasively for everybody that was involved.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it was a good time,
That's
and I think we collectively made something that seemed to speak to others, both here in Canada and abroad.
Totally, yeah. I mean, as someone who grew up in rural Manitoba, I mean, obviously didn't grow up in that time frame that was portrayed, but I mean, definitely rings true to a rural Manitoba experience. If there's any questions out there from the audience, I'm doing my best to monitor the chat, so feel free to ask a question if you have anything you'd like to ask Kim about. I would just like to get a sense of kind of what the filmmaking scene was like in Manitoba around the time that you're shooting this film. I mean, I'm not sure when Crime Wave came out. If that was kind of I think prior to this as a feature film, but like trying to think about like kind of what the scene was like or what the industry was like kind of at this time in 1989.
In its certainly in its infancy, in a sense of dramatic feature film making.
Yeah.
Documentary, of course, had been quite active. This was co-produced with the National Film Board, and so they represented a real strong anchor in Winnipeg at that time. And they had a program that was had expanded to allow feature films outside of Montreal and outside of Quebec and Ontario. And we were fortunate enough to be in the timing. That this particular project it was well suited for that, and so we'd done lots of work. I'd done lots of work with the National Film Board in advance of this, and the relationship continued on through into this project. I'm not sure if Joe McDonald will be watching this evening, but he was one of the co-producers with the Film Board, and they were just wonderful to work with. We've lost a lot of people that were working with us at that time. Ches Yetman was the executive producer for the Film Board, and Ches has passed. And my partner, Jack Clements, Marie Fournier, who was our production secretary, and Joe Haywood, our wrangler, and sadly, Gerard Parks, who I think did a wonderful job as starring as Grandpa Jack in the movie.
Totally.
So when I watch this, it's a combination of many, many, many things. The original life, that school that is featured in the show is actually Johnston School. My last name is Johnston. My great grandfather built that school, and I was so lucky enough to go to grade 1 there. And so this movie, it's pretty integrated in a lot of levels into my sensibilities.
Totally.
And so it's it's a special one for me. For sure.
It's great. There's a question from the audience here, and I was about to ask the same question. But how much of this film kind of is culled from your own kind of personal experience growing up?
I think the heart of it is. I shared a bed with my grandfather until we moved, and the scene where Will's waiting up at night, I remember that quite clearly because I did have trouble sleeping unless he was around. So there are little elements like that in terms of relationships that I drew on, and he was Grandpa Jack, and he was largely like that.
Yeah.
Kind, knowledgeable, loving man. And Ross and Audrey, as they're called in the movie, those are my parents' names. And I cherry picked certain things to hopefully make the story one that be engaging and entertaining. But a lot of it is it's from that earth. It was a unique experience, actually, going back right to the source with at that time. A contemporary crew, who we were going into the past in a sense, and to be there, it was a resurrection of many people, including my father at the time. He had passed away, and so it. What can I say? A very special experience.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, something always rings a little bit more true when it comes from your own personal experience as a filmmaker, I think.
It does. I just felt very lucky to be able to take a whole crew and make a movie right there and do that. I mean, it's an exceptional opportunity for a filmmaker to do that, and I feel very fortunate.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, one of the things I just actually posted on Facebook, if people are interested to find out more about the last winter, is actually an article that I found in a magazine from 1989, a feature article. I actually sent it to your son, Aaron Johnston, who I know, a couple years ago, actually, I think at this point. But it's a really interesting read, and so if people are interested or want to know more about the making of the film and about the film, check it out. It's just posted in the comment threads here, the pages from that scans from that article. So well, I mean, I guess where did your kind of career go from there? Like after making this film, what kind of things did you do after this film, and how was the reception of the film as well?
The reception of the film was all that we could really ask for.
Yeah.
We opened it, premiered at the Vancouver Film Festival, and I believe we won the most popular Canadian film there, and I think an award for the screenplay of some sort. One of the great fun little things that, for me personally, that came out of the festival is Julius Epstein, who wrote Casablanca.
Yeah.
Was one of the jury members for the screenplay award at the Vancouver Film Festival. And Julius and his wife came to the screening and asked if they could come to our party afterwards. And so it was a great honor to have that gentleman come and be there with us. And he was very gracious and very kind in his comments about the movie.
That's great.
Yeah, that was fun. And we opened here. We didn't really have a distributor at that point. So Canadian scene at that point.
Totally.
But what we did is the convention center in Winnipeg Cinema had been closed down. So we rented it and staffed it with a combination of freelance filmmakers here in Winnipeg and NFB staff. Got the popcorn machine working, hired a projectionist, put on a gala with the Manitoba Cancer Foundation, I think, here in town as the sponsors, and flew in the cast, and we had our opening. Oh. And that went very well, and the reception was particularly positive. And so we decided to continue to run the movie there commercially ourselves with with our gang, and which we did. And Orville Fruitman was a distributor with Cineplex, I think, in Toronto at that time. Anyway, we wound up talking with Orville. Orville saw that the box office in Winnipeg we were selling out. So Orville jumped on board. And within, I think, a month, or 3 weeks, we were playing on 5 screens, mainstream screens here in Winnipeg. And from there, it rolled out and we went across Canada with the movie. And then we decided that we might, see what we could do in the U.S. So we actually, with support of some folks, we raised some money and we opened it in the U.S. as well in, I think, maybe 25, 30 centers. Carmike Cinemas out of Atlanta liked it. They spotted it on their charts, I guess, because it was doing business in Minneapolis. And so they told us, how many prints do you have? Because we'll run it wherever you want us to run it. So eventually we wound up doing a deal with 20th Century Fox, who took out the home video rights for Canada and the U.S. And it was sold around the world as well. There were many festivals. We won festivals in Australia, and I have a lovely vase from the president of France. Amazing. From a festival we were invited to there in Lyon and Toulouse. So it was fun. It was a fun ride, and it was fun to sort of take Manitoba on the road and show folks. Yeah,
and it truly was a Manitoba production. I mean, there's so many of these early kind of Manitoba players involved in the production of this film.
Right. Manitoba Film and Sound had just, I think, what year? 86, I think they were formed.
Yeah.
I actually spent a year with a couple of years with a steering committee for the province and the government of Canada, actually, to develop the film policy for the province, and then spent a year with what is now Manitoba Film and Sound, helping to develop and write the policy. And so shortly after that, with all the pieces together, we were lucky to kind of like make it happen. Make The Last Winter happen, and many other projects, as we know, from that time forward. To look, I mean, the industry now is thriving. Let's put it that way. I mean,
totally, yeah. We're very fortunate to have so much production volume coming in, and hopefully it gets started again soon as we can put this pandemic behind us. A couple comments online here, just on our, actually this is via our YouTube broadcast on our website, from Bob Hamilton. Loved it 25 years ago and loved it tonight. And from Claire Moster, hi, this is Claire. I owned a white horse and was very proud of his performance in the movie. He lived to 33, and seeing the movie again is truly very touching. So lots of fans out there. I guess maybe we'll just end it on, I started kind of with the advice that many people get: don't work with animals, don't work with kids. I'm wondering if you're any kind of aspiring filmmakers that are maybe watching tonight, what kind of advice or what kind of tips do you maybe have for some people that are trying to get into the game?
You gotta love what it is that you're doing. I made another movie called For the Moment, and somebody was asking Russell Crowe, so what do you think about all this? And he said, we're in the middle of the movie, right? He said, well, I don't really know how it's going to turn out. He said, but he says, I know that Kim loves what he's up to here. And he said, and all it takes is one person has to love it, and the rest have to believe in that person. So for other filmmakers, you just don't do anything that you're kind of not committed to. Yeah. You got to love it, because it's a lot of work, and it's full of dangers and surprises and all that kind of thing. But if you're passionate about it, then just go for it. And whether it's kids and animals, doesn't really matter. Yes, yeah.
You'll make it work, right? I mean, and
it
speaks
to challenge anyway, right?
Totally, yeah. And I mean, just listening to you talk about this really speaks to kind of what I see as a really kind of DIY aesthetic from Manitoba. You know, you kind of have to make do with what we have, and you know, find who you can do to achieve these visions that these filmmakers have, because you know we don't have the infrastructure that some other places have had, at least in the past, especially.
Yeah, it forces you to be more creative on occasion.
Yeah.
Sometimes it'd be better to have more money, but sometimes being more creative is okay too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I remember one of the first films I ever made, which I would never show again. But there was a terrible technical issue where, I hard coded all of the information on the LCD monitor screen on the video camera into the actual film, and eventually we were like, okay, well, we're just going to figure out how to make this work somehow. You know, filmmaking is really about creative problem solving a lot of the times.
It is problem solving.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it is. It's problem solving. If you like problem solving, it's like puzzles. If you like that, then maybe it's a career for you.
Totally. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much, Kim, for joining us tonight.